Yep. Okay. Yes. 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 Good night. Good evening. Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon to whichever part of the world you're now joining from. This is Dr. Matthews on the GMS Live Voice of the Nation. I want to welcome you all to this new and different broadcasting, and I'm going to be able to at least bring to you the information as it is correct and in its best form to inform you this evening about a process that we need to always be informed and to be educated on that. So, yeah, I'm going to take another minute before I get started. So, share the live. Good evening to you from Guyana. To those all to all those who are joining. Good evening to you. Now, so before I start, I must explain to you, to those who would have gained or shown their interest, as a matter of fact, in the Black Love brand. We must understand Black Love is a brand to stand in place to tell the world that we are here to listen to each other, we the Aboriginal people. And Black Love is a brand that was designed to stand against oppression against a people, to stand against systematic slavery and racism against a people that are Aboriginal. So that's what Black Love is about. So I don't want you to be misunderstood, as a matter of fact, but I want you to understand that Black Love is here to help you to strengthen yourself, to give an understanding of who you are as a people, of Aboriginal people. You're not black, you're Aboriginal. So please do remember, there's no such thing as black people. They are an understanding or identification of Aboriginal. Black is an adjective, it's a description of a color. And we use that adjective and that description of that adjective, which is a color, to let you know exactly why we say black love. It's not to represent me or neither you who are Aboriginal like myself, but it's to represent a movement. The color is to represent a movement to stand against oppression and everything else thereof. So, once again, I must say good evening to you from Guyana to the Caribbean Isles, the West Indian Isles, the Pacific Isles, the British Virgin Isles, West Virgin Isles, Mexico, US, Canada, UK, EU, Beijing, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, the Korean Peninsula, to those from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, Pakistan and Hindustani or India, to those who are joining from the Australian continent, island continent, the Tonga Isles, and I keep saying the Tasmanian, but the Tasmania is also a group of islands of the continent of Australia. So I must correct myself in saying the Tasmanian Isles, the New Zealand Isles, and the Tonga Isles. Welcome to those who are joining from the African continent, as we say, the continent of Kush, or the Kushites, or the Kemites, Very pleasant good evening to you, good day, or good afternoon to whichever part of that continent you're looking at us from. Good evening to those who are joining from the South American continent, as far away as Chile, Argentina, uh, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Brazil, Guyana, and not Guyana, to those who are looking and as Aboriginal people, welcome to you from Guyana, Guiana, and not Guyana. And I'm going to get into that specific reason why I'm saying so. And to those who are joining me from Suriname, French and Dutch Guyana, uh, the Netherlands, Curacao, Trinidad and Tobago, and in the Island Republic of Barbados. A very pleasant good evening to you. What had happened over the period of years that I'm on the show, I used and I was keep using the word voice of democracy. I had the opportunity to sit and really go through the meaning of democracy. To those who are now joining, can you share the live? So to those who would be able to get a viewpoint, a vantage point of what the live is about, share the live this evening so persons can get to understand. So as I'm coming to you from the GMS Live Voice of the Nation and the GMS Live Voice, um, and the GMS Live Online Radio Voice of Guyana. And to those who are now joining, share the live once again, share the live. So we're talking about democracy. And I use that word tremendously through and out of on this platform and shows on the Gavin Matthews shows as a multiple period of time, but I was using it in a very wrong way. When I say in a very wrong way, I mean in a very wrong way. When we look up the word democracy and we're talking about it, so we can have people to people can be able to come to an understanding where am I coming from? What am I speaking about? Democratic values are being held up by a minority group of people, not a majority, a minority or a minority group of people. What am I coming from? Where am I coming from? When I say a minority group of people, I mean a group of people that can be seen as politicians, a group of people that can be seen as public servants, a group of people that can be seen as quote unquote Freemasons. And why is this set up in this way? You see, let me show you, for instance, Guyana politics. Democratic values are shared between the executive and the opposition or member of parliament. You can remember Guyana's constitution says that these are what makes up the government of the day, not the governing parties, the government. The executive party that's in power and the parliamentary parties that makes up the opposition. Both combined together makes up the government. That is one of the democratic values. Secondly, no two party goes against the democratic values or democratic ordinances. They all make up and agree to the same value. It is how they put it over, it's how they execute those democratic arms. I'm going to show you a simple example. Uh, Let us use the Police Service Commission. The Police Service Commission is designed to govern certain sections of the Guyana Police Force pertaining to the Assistant Commissioner goes right back down. But the democratic arm or values that it carries is that doesn't matter who is in office or which senior office is called to a position, they must have to execute the governance in that office in the way in which it is designed in a democratic way. So what is democracy? I can create a system that takes away your rights, that takes away your values, that reduces you to one third of a human being. That is democracy. Why would I say so? Because democracy is a platform that is used to create ideologies. Uh, find another way. I can have an idea, and the idea is to violate you 100%. But under a democratic state, I can practice that idea because democracy, it's all about that. It's all about who can create either a better system or a worse system to run a country or a government at any particular time. I'm going to show you Barrett Jagdeo for one. During the period of a 13-year period when he was president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, it's known, it's not known as the country as per se. It is known as an entity of cooperation. When he was president, over 1,000 plus Guyanese would have died. When he was president, he was in charge of creating mechanisms. Is either to either is either better Guyana economically or reduce Guyana economically. It is either better Guyana in the ways of life or reduce Guyana in the ways of life of its citizens. So what he was in charge of is creating values that we as Guyanese who are identified as citizens can live either better or by worse. But you see, at the end of the day, why you find that he's not being brought before the justice system as to answer for certain crimes, because the democratic basis of democracy is based upon that. Because he was executive, he can say that the people voted to put him there, and democracy gives him the opportunity to create ways so that either he profits or the minority profits and the majority suffers, because that's a democratic process. uh it sounds fancy. Democracy in itself sounds fancy. It sounds nice because all government runs by it. Like for instance, let me use the United States of America, the US, the United States. They practice political democracy. They can shout down at each other. They can describe each other as different, representation, like Republicans and Democrats, and they find all kind of nasty things to talk about each other. That's a democratic process. That's a democratic process. And what makes it and confirms it is because they use the laws, which they may call the Constitution of the United States of America, or the United States. So as in Guyana, that same is like now we're having a democratic process of installment or installation of governments. That is a democratic process. That's what you see happen on the 2nd of August 2020 when Ear Fraud and Barrett and the rest of them were sworn in. At one time I was saying that's undemocratic, but when you look back at it, it is a democratic process. Unless the politicians doesn't teach us that, and you see the thing is that I didn't even know that that was a democratic process. I was saying, oh, it's undemocratic. That's not democracy. If you check most of my shows, I talk about it, and I wasn't I wasn't aware of this is how democracy runs. I thought that a democratic policy or a democratic process was given the rights to the people, but not knowing the people give their rights to the politicians. That's how the system works, not only here in Guyana, but all over the world. That's why when Barrett stands up or Irfan stands up and all of them stands up and they say, well, I represent the people of Guyana, they're not lying because that's how the democratic process carries them. And you feel, well, oh yes, they're representing me because that's democracy. That's not democracy. Believe you me. I mean, sorry. I mean, let me refrain that. Oh, the actions in which they use is a democratic process. We will feel that democracy is to do as according to we say. It is our will. But when you check the Constitution, it is based upon handing all powers and rights over to them. Let us say Mr. Norton wins the election tomorrow. It is based upon his ideologies. It is based upon his will if he wants Guyana to be progressive by practicing a different form, the same democracy, but in a different style. He can choose to do whatever he wants to do. If he wants to practice a form that will bring an uneconomic, a destabilizing form to all Guyanese, we gave him that right. You know why we gave him that right? Because we are the loyal subjects to that constitution. You see, I was talking to an individual earlier, and it was amazing that I had to refrain certain statements because, like for instance, a democratic government or a government that practices a democratic alliances to the constitution, we may call them, oh, it's a good government, it's a nice this and it's a nice that, but when you check the meaning and the substance in which they stand on, they become a de facto administration because democracy gives them no legality or no legitimate reason. It's a principle, it's not a rule. You understand? And they thrive on that principle. And whosoever holds their loyal subject or subject to that principle wins the most. Like, for instance, let's use the religious organizations. They also practice democracy. They also practice certain forms of democracy, a religious, social welfare of democracy, where they keep most of the information from you, the truth, the things that you need to know. And they activate what you call a social engineering policy so you can live by. So instead of you going home and know the truth, you got to keep going back to church to have that kind of feeling of the truth, which is a democratic process. Uh, I'm trying to find the best way forward that I can put it over to all of you who are looking because I was asleep. When when I thought that I was in the process of waking up Guyanese to a democratic process, and I keep using the word all the time, I was more asleep than anything else because I kept using the word that I hadn't not the meaning properly of. I had a clue that I was using it wrongfully until I wasn't only awakened, but I was properly educated about the system of a democratic policy, of a democratic principle. So now I become the idiot because I keep on the show all the night. And if you understand, an idiot is a person who has no, is not aware of the information available and the truth. That's an idiot. So when I keep pushing the democratic process every night on the show, I realized that I was talking about things that I didn't have a clue of until I was given that information. This is how come I get to realize that certain words that we keep sitting or standing and talking about with haven't even a clue of, we give ourselves over to the process. We become slaves because the world constitute the international law that constitutes all the countries are based upon the misinformation of words that we use, that we become subjects to them. If we use words in its proper context, then we are not subject to them. We stand outside of their subjections. We stand outside of their laws. We become naturalized persons instead of citizens to the country or to the cooperation. It's like, for instance, a simple conversation and it turning up to be when your daughter or when your child is born, and you register them by having a birth certificate. You register them to have a birth certificate. The Constitution indicates that when we register their births and we collect that certificate, they become the property of the state. We don't know that. We're so ignorant that whenever we register our child and we say, oh, yeah, okay, no problem. This is the birth certificate, the born, and this, the. But that certificate, if reading the Constitution properly, that child now becomes the property of the state. That is why in Guyana's Constitution, the constitutional law that the state has the rights of the child. Let us say there is an outbreak of a disease and that child has to be immunized or vaccinated. The state has the right because in the Constitution shows that the child not only the property of the state but belongs to the state. So the state can do as they feel to the child until when that child is 18 years of age. 17 as a matter of fact. From the date of birth to 17 years old in Guyana's Constitution. And that's a democratic process. That's a democratic process that I didn't even have a clue of. No, in order to don't be a property of the state, you have to disassociate yourself from the state. That means give up your rights to be to be a citizen. Give up your citizenship to the state, which is the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and naturalize yourself as an aboriginal. So now you don't only belong to this, you don't belong to the state anymore, but then you can challenge the state if the state decides to say, well, you're a property of mine, which is a defamation of character. You see, by we so much asleep that as the year goes by, we become deeper in sleep, in a state of sleep. We don't know our rights. Like, for instance, we are educated to be subjects of the state. And how we become educated? I'm talking about the Aboriginal people. we fall under the line of entertainment. So you find your education now becomes that line of entertainment. Remember, I keep talking about entertainment, the character, the culture of entertainment. It is a fact. Is either we choose to become entertained in sports, we choose to become entertainer in entertainment in movies and action theaters and all these things, or we choose to become entertainers in the line of oh yeah, that's arts and drama, right? We got sports, arts and drama, or music. We could choose. And you check, most of us prefer the entertainment world because that's where we think the money is. But that's an illusion. And in that illusion that we live by someone else's illusion, which is a total lie. Now we find ourselves on stage taking off our clothes. Look at that young girl taking off her clothes at the Dexter Dub fanfare that went on, and it's all over social media, but that's someone else's child. Whether she's a big girl or a teenager or what, the thing is that that is where we tell ourselves that's the only good path for us, but that's the wrong path because the system that we live by only pushes that path or that line of culture or that line of livelihood to us because that's how they see us. And they will keep on pushing that line. So we go to school, we get the same education on that line. The food that we eat preserves ourselves to that line. And the thing is that for women, they scrub you even more than the men because the amount of things that they put into you as a woman, that they start affecting you in the womb. So when you are impregnated, the child comes into the world with those deficiencies. And that's a democratic process. They tell you when your child is born, oh, they gotta come for a BCG vaccine. BCG that has at least 0.25% of mercury, which is bad for a child. It slows the brain down. So the child wouldn't be able to grow. So what happens now? They control the percentage of how we use our brain. They don't want us to climb beyond the 10% of our brain. They want us to remain. They want us to remain within the 10% of usage of our brain so they can control us. They know our actions of our tomorrow, next week, next year. They know how we would operate because they control us. Whether that is the law all over the world, that doesn't mean you have to live by it. That doesn't mean you have to live by it. That doesn't mean we need to take the law that the world has, that constitutional democratic system, and say it, we're going to live by it. No, because it is not perfecting our lives. The duty is to allow us to always remain in sleep and we could never awake. Because if we do awake out of the slumber that we are in, and we become educated, well, then they cannot make money. They cannot make profit. Business wouldn't be fruitful. So to always keep on enslaving a population of people, you have to keep them asleep. You have to you have to create avenues that they can keep asleep. But there is a law, there is an international law of naturalization, that you can naturalize yourself out of the system of democracy. There is a way. There are lots of ways, but there is of naturalizing yourself. And the international law of democracy has to respect that. You, the individual that assumes naturalization. To those who are now joining, democracy is the conversation. And why I would not use democracy anymore within the lines of my programming to you, the Guyanese people here in Guyana and in the diaspora, because democratic values are unjust. It's the world's political system has chosen to use democracy in a very unjust way. To me, there's no justification because the word democracy falls on anything happens, and that is democratic values. Because you elected, and the thing is that they're using your powers of election to exercise democracy. They could turn around and say, well, I didn't just show up and do this off my own. You voted for me. Yeah, we understand that I voted for you, but then I didn't know that this was democracy. I didn't know that the system talks about this. Oh, when they can turn around and tell you, well, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of the information is no excuse. It's right in front of you. But I didn't see it, but it is right in front of you. The truth is hidden in plain sight. Remember, I keep using certain words back then on the show that like this truth is hidden in plain sight, and also my phrase that I normally use: the wealth of a man is not what he builds, gains, or buy, but it's the ability to change lives. Indeed, that's the wealth of a man. Knowledge is power. And when you teach your children and you teach your loved ones knowledge, things that they deserve to know, the truth. When you dissect the information and you show them the truth that is out there, the thing is that everything that I'm talking about, you can find in the Holy Quran, you can find in the Bible. Yes, you can find everything that I'm talking about of the democratic systems and values and all these things. They are there in the Holy Scriptures as we talk. There are certain sections that you can find and you can read it. The political systems are based upon not what is out there in the scriptures or in certain texts, but it's based upon your acknowledgement. They can't function without you. So the more they create a system to for you to keep on sleeping, it's the better for them. They will always progress. Like in the churches, they use this democratic value. They say belief. For if you believe in this and you believe in that, that makes you a good Christian. But a lot of us didn't know that belief is to be stagnant on one particular thing. But to know is to progress beyond that particular thing. And a lot of us doesn't want to know. We want to believe. So they keep on pushing that word. Like they would usually say, well, the 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 the, the evidence of things not seen is the evidence of things hoped for. And they use faith. Because they say that faith, because we cannot see faith. Faith depends upon our belief system. But can we go beyond faith? Some of us don't, because we allow faith to control us, to use us. If we take the leap of faith, but if we take the leap of knowledge, then we move beyond faith. If we stay within faith, we stay within a democratic process. That is to show you now the church and the system is one with each other. They're not separated. Because it's the same system the politicians use, and it's the same system the church use. You think that you sitting down there in the aisle and the priest or the preacher knows that you know more than him, he becomes uncomfortable because he realizes that you understand the democratic process. So sometimes you can be made part of the system by joining with them and gaining a lot. So that's why a lot of politicians and a lot of lawyers don't tell you the truth because they know the truth, but they wouldn't be able to tell you the truth because they're sworn to secrecy. And that secrecy makes their lives comfortable. You ever notice that when you're at the police station and they say, and let me show you the democratic process the police use. This is the laugh of it. Somebody goes to the police station, make an allegation against you. The police now accompanies the person, the alligator, the person who makes the allegation, accompanies the alligator to your residence. And they invite you to the station. That's a democratic process. When you leave your place of abode to go to the police station, the minute you leave and you go to the police station, you enter into the police station. You voluntarily surrender yourself without the knowledge of you knowing that you're doing that. So as soon as you enter into the police station, the police then arrests you. It's a democratic process. And they arrest you based upon the allegation that is being made without an investigation based upon allegation. And let us say it depends upon the level of allegation. If they realize no credible evidence can be made available, then they send you away on your own recognizance. It's a democratic process. If depends upon the value of the allegation, then they put you on bail. When you go on bail now, you become a property of the state within that time. Anytime you can be arrested again. Because there's not only an allegation now, there is what you call a process of you being either an intent, a criminal with intent, a mind with a criminal intent, or already commit a crime that you're now a constant, you're now a nuisance to society. So any small crime, they can arrest you because why? You're constantly at the police station based upon so. So they use that as a democratic process to profile you because you belong to the system. You belong to the state. You have an ID card, you have a birth certificate. Somebody got a passport. So the system owns you. You're property of the state. They can't pick you up at any time. So there we have it on that part. And sometimes when you're at the police station, the first thing they tell you, anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. So you got to mind what you talk. You got to mind what you sit down and say. So they take you to court to challenge you now, this magistrate court now, because sometimes they haven't finished the investigation, it's not concluded. It's based upon the magistrate now, who they take you before. By this circumstantial evidence provided if the magistrate will find you guilty. No. Heaven help if the magistrate find you guilty and you're innocent. Because based upon circumstantial evidence, you're unable to represent yourself or to say things that can either put you out of trouble because you don't know what to say. It's a democratic process. So you put in jail, you get 3 months or 6 months or 10 months. Innocently, you come out of jail, you can't challenge the system because you don't know how to go about challenge the system because you were imprisoned innocently. And that democratic process is to tell you, well, then I can keep you or I can sentence you to jail because you were unable to defend or identify yourself. What is the identification? We don't know. You belong to the state. How are you going to defend yourself? I don't know. So that means anybody can make an allegation against you and put you in jail. You are unable to defend yourself because you know not the law. So that's why you're going to jail, because ignorance of the law is no excuse. It is the same thing they use all the time, every time. Whether you're whether you go to the Supreme Court or the magistrate courts, that's the fact. You see, with my case, remember when they arrested me, they said it is alleged that I used a computer device to cause harm or dismay or emotional something to the minister. And I end up in court for that. But the thing is that they're having problems because why? Then I didn't knew it then, but I wasn't being able to assist them in anything because I don't know what they're talking about. Now I know it. You can't even charge me until when your investigation is completed. Because if it isn't completed, you could imagine when the case gets out to court, what's gonna happen? Might sue the daylights out of you. Because you're practicing a democratic process, and I gotta keep saying undemocratic. You're practicing a democratic process that's against my will. So when I sit on my show and I say, "Oh, democracy must prevail," ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Guyanese all, I was totally wrong. I understand what you're saying, Patterson. These teachings are for the awakened ones and for and or who wants to know themselves. I understand that. But it has to start from somewhere. That's why the voice of the nation starts the education process. Because democracy doesn't end with the PPP, it continues after. If the AP and UAFC get in, it is the same democracy they got to run the government by. They can't run by nothing more else because they are tenants of the Constitution. The Constitution guides them. That democratic process is the Constitution. So they become tenants of the Constitution. The only way they can be outside of the Constitution is if they halt the Constitution, stop the process and the practice of the Constitution, and do their own thing, which now becomes a dictatorship, because democracy is not a dictatorship. So y'all understand me? So in all around the world, it's a lose-lose situation. It's never a win-win. The only time it becomes a win situation is if we decide to naturalize ourselves outside of the system. And there's nothing hard. Just gotta denounce your citizenship. It's not nothing hard. And if you ask me, well, I've already done that. But it's not nothing. It's not a hard thing to do. You becomes a noble. You're not a citizen anymore to the system. If you decide to be always remain a citizen, that's when you always decide to remain in bondage and slavery. And the people them who always guide, I'm going to show you a simple example. I'm going to show you all a democratic process. And now remember, you know this young lawyer, what's his name? Navindra Singh, uh, the ex-chancellor of the judiciary son, that end up in that spitting thing with the police woman. And the courts fail. The courts failed to execute a warrant on him. Do you know why? Because he's a part of the same minority group of people that really know what a democratic system is. So they cannot prosecute one another. If they can, fine, no problem, because one must hate the other. But then you're in breach of that democratic system that you swore an oath to protect. All of them. Politicians, lawyers, pastors, all of them. because the people who practice that democratic system are people like themselves, lawyers, judges, doctors. You ever wonder why a doctor has a Hippocratic oath that he swears so that he can't tell you the truth of the medical system? And the nurse, you ever study to wonder why? You ever study to wonder why the presidents are sworn to obey and to protect the Constitution by all costs, foreign or domestic, against any threats, foreign or domestic? Because they're aligned to the democratic system. Of course, democracy is a myth, Michael. It is, but they live by that myth. Those myths has principles. They live and die by that myth. One may wonder, okay, ask the question, so how can I exit myself out of this whole scenario of democracy? It's sad to know that since before in the belly, in the womb, they're capitalizing on our freedoms. They're restricting us. So when we come into this world, they make sure that everything, every process that we go through, every democratic process that we go through, we must not be able to activate or to utilize more than 10% of our cerebral capacity. You could imagine a human being who's exercising 15% of their cerebral capacity, which is 10% and under is his system. And that's outside the system. You could imagine the first thing they can say, oh, he's a crazy person. His head isn't good. And next thing you know, tomorrow morning, here he end up dead. Y'all can remember Dr. Sebi, the man who cured HIV AIDS, which is conceived to be of just a virus, like a normal cold. You can remember the end of his termination of life. They said, oh, he was nuts, he was crazy, he was in a prison in Panama. And I had to keep him there just for the security of his own health, and then he died. They didn't want him to continue teaching people that in order to survive, you need to eat to stay healthy and not eat to satisfy yourself. He was teaching you that the democratic system in what was imposed upon you would always make you unhealthy. You will never survive in a democratic system. You will be like a walking dead. Every day you got to drink tablets. So we need to understand that democracy, like what I talked about over and over and over again, is something became an illusion, a falsified. As a matter of fact, I didn't even have a clue where I was when I started being educated at what really democracy is. Believe you me missing last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, yesterday, Monday, it was a process. I had to go through that process. I had to go through that change because I didn't know how important is that change. Let me bring up this other democratic piece that I wanted to share. You know, they tell you in economics that the country's wealth can only be shown in its resources, right? The country's wealth can only be identified in its resources. This is what the economic teachings tell you. Now, let me show you the democratic process now. Switches it around. I can turn up for you resources. But once my dominance, which is my currency, that piece of paper with the ink is available, you ain't got a choice. What is the dominance? You have joined the United Nations Council of Democratic Nations and signed on to it to practice democracy. So you can't refuse me money because you're being guided by my democratic guidelines, which is the United States of America, United States, and other world power systems, as they call themselves. So with me, resources which is much valuable more than you piece of paper because my guidelines, my system is based upon your democratic teachings. I can't refuse you dollars. I have to accept it as a dominance. So you ever see such madness? People here taking out your resources, taking them out, extracting it, and turn and pay you dollars that has no value, none whatsoever. Some people might say, "Oh, you talking trash." Seriously? Let me show you a simple instance. If you win the lotto tomorrow, let's say 50, 60, 80 million dollars, 100 million, 200 million dollars lotto. To a person who never had $1 million in their life, they wouldn't be guided how to spend that money because they have never had such wealth yet in their lifetime. Because they don't know to spend it and be guided to spend it, it's because they never worked for it. So they will never see the value in the money. You could only see the value in the money if you work for it. Y'all get my point? You could only see the value in the money if you haven't worked for it. You ain't gonna see the value. You're gonna want to enjoy yourself. You want to drink, party, sport, wear the nice clothes, buy the fanciest cars, got six, seven, eight houses because you got the money to spend. But you haven't seen the value in it because you never worked for it. So the only way the money has value is if you work for it. And then working for it makes no sense because here why? Let us use one of the richest family in Guyana, and these people got dominance on the economic market. Some of them print Guyana currency. Yes, some of these wealthy families print Guyana currency. They had the mint to print, so they would never be poor. They would always stay wealthy because if I share out $8 million, I could print 10 more. I always get money. And that's a democratic process. The democratic process is for always the weak remains the weak, unstable, never stable, and the rich remains the rich. That is the democratic process. And the politicians has to follow the rules. The religious organization has to follow the rules. That's why they don't pay taxes. The religious organization don't pay taxes. They make millions of dollars when the month comes. The leaders lives extravagant lifestyles, but they don't pay taxes because their position is to make sure to keep you asleep all the time, to have you depending upon faith and a belief system. And the thing is that the democratic values step into place. They always do. They don't have a choice than to teach you that what they're teaching you, or preach upon you that what they're preaching to you. So you are always unable to gain knowledge. Those are the democratic values. That's what democracy is about. The less information that you have, it's better for them. The less you know, the more idiot you become, it is the better for them. And these words, we get offended when somebody say you're an idiot. It's like, you can't idiot, boy. But are you knowledgeable of the fact? Or they say you're ignorant. Who you calling ignorant? But do you have any knowledge about what is going on? Do you have a clue? Do you have an understanding? I have a brother here asks me, is it a brother or is it a female? How can a family print money? Do you know that the US Federal Reserve is a family? It's not government, it's a privately owned business. They print the money. Do you know who controls all the banking system worldwide? The Rothschild family. They only print the money, but they bank it for you. They print it, give it to you, you work hard for it, and they tell you you gotta bank it back with them. And they save it. They now stabilize your welfare by money. They make you create laws that you can't walk around with more than $1 million in your pocket because that's now seen as money laundering. You gotta go to the bank and bank it. There's no government system prints their own money. It's a family that prints it. Some of the countries that we talk about print their own money. They have a printing system that they print it. But sometimes that priority is being given to one of the wealthiest families in any country. You check. You check some countries who print their own money. That contract is being given to one of the most wealthiest family. They keep printing money all the time. Money is not wealth. It's a piece of paper with some ink and some signs on it. That's what it is. It doesn't contribute to wealth. It contributes to a legal tender note to be spent to buy things. That's all. You see what Russia did? Russia says, so, okay, y'all don't want me rubles because y'all don't want to. Me rubles ain't making sense, and then y'all don't want to buy my oil because y'all say, well, I'm a war criminal. Fine. Well, the OPEC community can change up the way in which they do business now. Oil producing economic countries, OPEC. Well, here, what we want is gold, silver. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for. Well, to the person who's sending the message, I wish if you could have called in so we could get a conversation too. But democracy in its full form is how the world economic system is run. It is how all world power creates the principles that they run by. It's an international law that your country must embrace a democratic value. And when you find out, wait, this is the democracy that they're talking about, you're like, for real? Do you know that since when this de facto regime were installed, you know what is a democratic value now? To set aside in your constitution for governments that can be installed in case that you elect government that doesn't fit with the international community, that they can install persons of their own choices. Like, for instance, Haiti. You check every time the Haitians come together by a vote to vote the person of their choice to become the leader. The US make sure that that person is overthrown and they install somebody of their choice. It is the same thing going on with Venezuela. The people of Venezuela installed a person of their choice, and that person made changes that were undemocratic. That was Hugo Chavez. And now he's dead. Now Maduro is taking his place. Believe you me, in the United Kingdom, their heart, I want you to understand, every country on earth does not print their own money. It's a private entity prints their money. Okay? It's a private entity that prints their money. Every country. They don't print their own money because the system that they runs, that corporate system, is an investment by a corporation. The corporation is known as the UK, the United Kingdom. The corporation is known as the US, United States. The corporation is known as the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and not Guyana. The corporation is known as Brazil, Venezuela. All these are corporations. They sit on original lands, and the people who claim to be citizens of their corporations are loyal subjects, and they are run by a democratic system that they call democracy. Check it up. Once you want to live in the system, you got to be a part of the system. Send your children for immunization, send them to school, send them to the hospitals, send yourselves to the hospital, go get vaccinated. All these things makes up the corporation that governs the land that you're on. And the police are make sure that they did. Why think you call them police? The word police is to police your own citizens to make sure that they fall in line with that democratic process. You cannot be a citizen and don't want to be part of that democratic process. You become undemocratic. So you get in prison for two ways. If you stay as a democracy, you're still in prison. If you go against a democracy and you're still a citizen, you can still be in prison. In anywhere around, you can still be in prison. You're a subject, you're a loyal subject, you're a slave. Sorry to say that. But these are the facts. I can't shy away from them. I can't pretend that it doesn't exist. I can't be one of the clergymen who would sit down and say, well, oh, it doesn't exist. Oh, don't bother with that. That's trash. When you start to question any democratic process in church, they'll tell you it's the devil speaking. They say, oh, the devil is within you. You have a spirit of contention. Boy, your third eye opens up. That pineal gland sends the signals to you. Say, well, hey, watch. You suffering your own self. You need to move beyond this. And when you start seeing things and you start questioning your clergymen, they said, well, you need to pray some more. It is the devil taking hold of you. The same democratic process. You know, they tell you, oh, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince the world he never exists. Indeed, he don't exist. The devil is you who decide to do evil things. Indeed, the devil don't exist. It is you who decide to do evil things. That's the devil. That means I was right on that part because so long I've never seen the devil come and kill 22 people or 9 people in a church at praying. Never see come down yet and do all of that, all of the blaming the poor fictional character when the original character is the human being itself who decide to practice all these evil things. Let me show you how these things work. Let me show you how this democratic system especially in the church, the Christian church, especially that church in Rome. All the pedophiles go to jail. Since I know myself, all the people who prey upon young boys and young girls, when they're caught, they've been tried in a court system and they'll be sentenced in jail. But what happened to the clergymen, the bishops, the deacons, all of them who interfere with them little boys and them little girls never went to jail because they practiced the democratic process. And part of that democratic process is to participate yourself in such heinous acts. It's part of a grouping. They call them all kind of thing, the Illuminatis, the Brotherhood. They give them different names, but they practice a democratic process. That process is for the world system to create, to bring about principles of your own desire and designs to people to live by, whether they profit or they don't. And majority of these democratic process, people do not profit. The world population does not profit from these democratic systems because it takes it, to me it's worse than the dictatorship. The dictatorship is pronto, it's in front of your face, you don't care if you like it or not, and if you rebel you die. But the democratic process is to lie, and they're right in front of your face, and them boys coming out in line brutally. Oh, well, uh, the priest that harassed the little boy, he has an illusional effect, and clinically something is wrong with him. But he interfered with the people child. Sometimes the people know about the democratic process and put their child up to participate in that that what should I say? That ritual. And when they're being caught, they say, well, I didn't know that was happening. It's a democratic process. You know, I was saving the juiciest part for last. You can remember when when Mr. David Granger, everybody say he gave up the election and he allowed the PPP to be installed and all these different things that happened, and he sell out Guyanese. Let me inform you, that was a democratic process. But they gonna come and tell you that. Let me tell you something. You see, information and knowledge is so sweet. You see, when your eyes become open up, the zeal within you, that fire that can be unquenched, just wants to spread out, to give people more information, to help them to know who they are and what they are and what they're a part of. You become pregnant, you want to give birth to such knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that you mind giving it for free, like what I'm doing now. Yes, brothers and sisters, yes. The process of what the APNU AFC done under David Granger in the past election, that is a democratic process. They just choose to do what they want to do. What Wilkshire did in her judgment in elections petition 99 and 88 when she threw it out, that's her position. She sits on the bench as a judge to adjudicate. That is a democratic process. She's there to adjudicate. What is the adjudication? By my mind, what is good for the gander is good for the goose. Remember that? She said that. By my mind. That is her position, to adjudicate. It's left to the politicians and the lawyers to have we, the people who are ignorant, the idiots, to rant and rage over what the democratic process of adjudication is. You see, if that was explained to me, then I would have known. But they're going to sit down and tell you that. As a people, no, they will never sit down and tell you whatever Roxanne George comes up with is to adjudicate. Yes, you left surprised. Me and Arthur was surprised. But it doesn't matter who adjudicate what. That is the process. It's a democratic process. She can't be tried for that. She fulfilled her duty as a judge to adjudicate. It's a democratic process. Another judge can overturn or overrule her ruling. Yes, another judge can do that. Overturn or overrule her ruling and rule in favor of somebody else. It is still their position to adjudicate whether you profit from it or you benefit or you don't. That is the process. So democracy in itself, it's a failed state. So any country or any government who's practicing democracy or that democratic process as we talk about is not a certified relevant government. It's a de facto government. To practice democracy, you have to be de facto because democracy is a lie. It's an illusion. It's someone else's illusion we live by. So they create these words, use the English language that is used to adjudicate upon their loyal subjects. Yes, to those who are looking. English language was created to adjudicate upon their loyal subjects, the democratic process of these corporations. So when you talk things that doesn't make sense, you're actually giving up yourself. You're already enslaved. And when you say things that doesn't make sense, they hold these things against you. Like those who turn out to say, yo, nigga, what's up? Nigga. Do you know what's the meaning of nigga? Do you know what it represents? To be a nigger is someone who has syphilis, gonorrhea, meningitis. That's a nigger. But we don't want to know that. It sounds nice. Some of us want to identify ourselves as a nigger or a negro, but that's what it means. To say that I'm a black man, black is an adjective. It's a definition of a color. That's why when you say to those who know the meaning of certain words, especially in English language, especially when you go to their country, you say, "Oh, I'm black." They treat you like stock, like how they make inventory. Oh, I got 10 bags of rice, 15 bags of sugar. You're stock because it's an adjective. It defines something. So if I say rice in a bag is a bag of rice, it's defining something. So if you say I'm black and I know black, it's a definition of a color, I'll treat you like a black man because you don't know what you're saying. You're just livestock. But if you say I'm aboriginal, they can't treat you like stock. They got to treat you like an aboriginal because you identify yourself as an aboriginal. But we would say, why don't they teach us that in school? No, they wouldn't teach you that in school. You're the property of the state. They teach you what they want to teach you. So when you open your mouth, you belong to them more. Every single day you open your mouth and you identify yourselves of different things, you belong to them. You can't challenge them. That's democracy. That is a democratic value in which you have or hold within you. I'm betting you that somehow or the other, all that I've talked about tonight, sometime way back then or whenever, you have heard something very similar, but you didn't pay attention. It's like me. I used democracy as late as last week. You forget every time I come on the show, I said, well, democracy this, democracy that. But I didn't know that democracy was made up of all these things. I thought I knew because of reading the Constitution. I thought, well, oh, yeah, I have a clue what is democracy. But no, I didn't. I didn't. I use something now that calls the Black Law Dictionary. Black Law Dictionary is not for, it's just a definition. You hear the word is black law. It's not a people, it's Black Law Dictionary. And sometimes you use the same dictionary that you have and you realize the meaning is right there. You know, the amazing thing is that everything I spoke about tonight, you can find it in the scriptures. You can find it in the scriptures. And it's amazing. When you find it, you search and you find it, you said, what? This is written in the scriptures all the time. I didn't know. It's not that. We didn't know the definition of the words, the meaning of it. So we left as a lost people. But then they would say that we're not lost because we put the truth out there, it's just you fail to read it. By the way, I want to thank all those who have tuned in tonight and will be able to and was able to be a part of this show and to send your comments. I know there were some changes that were made. My apologies to it, but I will keep on doing this now. This is one of the new programs where I'll be able to teach you instead of tearing up any situation, and the situation remains the same. The People's Progressive Terrorist Party is an installation government that practiced terrorism upon a people of Aboriginal origin. Their duty is to oppress, set apart, criminalize, racialize a people so they will not know their rights. That is who the People's Progressive Party is, practicing that democratic value. But I want to say thank you very much to all those who have joined. Thank you very much to those who participate in this hour and a half program. We want you to join tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, the lesson continues. I will try to break it down into syllables for you tomorrow so you can be able to I can be able to explain to you. I can give you a few verses in the scriptures or a few parts in the dictionary where you can go and find it. I want to see if I can get someone else to come on board on this program because there are lots of people that have this knowledge that you and I don't even know. So I'm going to try to see if I can invite one or two of them to be on tomorrow night's program and to share. And let's have that discussion. This is Dr. Matthews saying, stay safe, be careful, sanitize yourself, and wear a mask. Don't forget the little ones you take into public places. Black Love continues. The brand continues. I've asked a few people to give me a call. I've sent some messages to them. There are one of them who's in the country, and I want you to either receive some information where your stuff is abroad or give you what I have presently. Stay safe, be careful once again. Good night, and Cheerios for now.